Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. Let's do an update on Elsa. The good news with Elsa that the forecast track is pretty straightforward, and even the intensity forecast, there's a little bit of wiggle room, but overall, we've got a pretty good handle on the system. I've seen basically about 10 consecutive advisories where we pretty much have the same track, so that's kind of nice to have that kind of consistency. It's a really interesting storm, too. If you've been watching me the last couple of days, you know the storm is very lopsided. I'm going to zoom in on the center of it because it's just to the west of Key West, Florida. And what I mean by lopsided is the storm is not symmetrical. It doesn't have equal weather on all sides. So if you look at the circulation, it's actually on the west side of this big blob of moisture, which bad news for Florida and the Keys. That's where they are. They're on the worst side. There's really dry air moving in from the northwest side of this thing that is really affecting it. And there's also a whole bunch of wind shear. And what I mean by wind shear, there's actually winds pushing the storms off of the center. That wind shear is problematic for hurricanes. They don't like to have wind around them. They like to create their own wind. So the fact that you've got dry air, what we call being entrained, and the wind shear likely means this storm is not going to get much stronger over time, even though it's over the very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. The other dilemma is, as it's kind of been shifting a little east here initially, the center, it's going to be hugging the coast a little more, which means more of the circulation is going to start moving over land, which means it's going to have a tough time developing even further. So let's put the official forecast cone on there, and you can see the track. And again, there will be an updated track here coming up shortly, right around 11 o'clock. I don't anticipate much change because it's been fairly consistent. In fact, if I throw the forecast models up there, they're all clustered together. It's pretty much I-95 up the East Coast, and then off the areas near basically right around the Norfolk area. But let's take a quick look at the timing of this. So it's going to move up here today, basically be up here in Florida, moving inland sometime, probably late tonight, early tomorrow. And then it's going to be up here near Brunswick, Georgia as we go into the day tomorrow morning, and then by the afternoon it's way up here by evening up near Virginia Beach. So look at that. That is basically flying to the north and east. And again, it's going to be a tropical depression at that time, which means likely some pretty weak conditions as it moves to the north and east. And just real quickly, the guidance is fairly consistent. It's probably maxed out where it is now. Could it perk up maybe to 70? There's still a chance it could do that, and there is some wiggle room there. In the high end, it's here, low end here, but you could see it's pretty much for the next 24 hours maintaining, and then drops off, and then we're hovering right around tropical storm to tropical depression strength. When even the outliers are barely into the hurricane force, that's a good sign. And here's another look at that guidance. That's what you want to see. Tightly clustered area of guidance there. Here's a look at the infrared imagery real quick. And again, I'm gonna flip this over to the high res, just because I think there's some cool things. You can actually see the center is like right in here. You see how it's kind of naked or like exposed? The deep thunderstorms off to the east. So the center could get tugged to the east more, which means more interaction with Florida. But either way, it's having a tough time. This is not a sign of a really healthy system. But as I mentioned, it doesn't matter to Florida because they're under the worst weather. So tornadoes, flash flooding, even storm surge, probably up to 3 to 5 feet in a few locations. So let's look at this future cast on where it's going to be going and what it's going to look like going through the Carolinas. All right, so let's take a look at the future of Elsa. Elsa's going to be moving to the north. You could see it moving up through Florida. Notice the time frame. This is later tonight. We go into tomorrow morning. It's in northern Florida. Into the afternoon hour, starts moving up into South Carolina. And again, doesn't look like a lot in the Charlotte area. We can't rule out an isolated shower or storm tomorrow in the afternoon, but the chances are pretty much 30-40%. But then we go into early Thursday. So this is 6 a.m. Thursday. This will probably be the worst of the weather. In Charlotte, it'll be interesting to see how much of this rain band, this northwest side, there's going to be a really sharp gradient here where there's absolutely nothing and then a deluge. But pretty much here's I-95. You could see it right there. Basically along and east of there, that's where the worst weather's going to be. We'll go into Thursday morning. That's really heavy rain there in eastern North Carolina. And again, there will be some storm surge issues because of the strong onshore wind here. So especially eastern North Carolina, I think we will see above average tides, maybe 1 to 3 feet higher than average. And then we go into the afternoon Thursday, and the system by Thursday night is gone. So you can see that's a fairly quick. So that's Thursday morning. Boom, 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 boom. By Thursday afternoon, if you're on the beaches of South Carolina, things could actually be drying out because you got an offshore wind, which is a drying air, a drying flow, and then it pushes off to the northeast, and there you go, gone. Real quickly, I want to show you a quick look at the precipitation or rainfall. You kind of see that bullseye there along 95 East, generally in the 1 to 3 inch range, some localized heavier. But look at this sharp gradient. I mean, Monroe might get an inch, Charlotte might get a half an inch, and Hickory might get a quarter of an inch. Winds, this is not a big wind maker. The Outer Banks, it's certainly going to be very breezy, and I think this is the one area where we could see tropical storm gust at least. Eastern North Carolina, Pamlico Sound, Albemarle Sound, and then out towards the Outer Banks. It's just exposed, so there's going to be a much higher chance of seeing 40 to 45 mile an hour winds. But most of the coast is looking at 30, 35, and then inland 15 to 20. So really not a huge deal. Now, you've seen me show this map a couple of times, and I'm actually going to kind of move this, shrink it down so it's a little bit easier to see, and move in the legend here. So this is where I look at for storm surge. So you can see some of the highest water levels are down here in Georgia just because of the shape of the coast. Again, you've got this concave shape, so the water gets pushed in there. So around Savannah, might see some pretty high water levels, but as you go up the coast, the water levels are a little bit lower, but that's only half the story. One of the things we look at is called inundation, how much water is going to come on areas that normally don't see water. So if we look at this real quickly, let's see if it's actually going to show up. Let me see if it plots, because it's having a tough time plotting, it looks like there. Let me replot it here. We'll refresh it and see if it'll refresh there. I think there we go. I got to change it to the Atlantic side. Okay, there we go. So you can see some of these water levels. And again, down here below my head, you can see, these light blues, dark blues are like 1 to 2.5. You get into the greens and yellows, you're getting more towards 3, 4. But you can see a lot of this is intercoastal and intertidal areas where it normally gets high water anyways. You're not looking at a bunch of issues, but you could see a couple areas there could be some high water, especially down in South Carolina. As you go move north into North Carolina, Ocean Isle looks like a little area on the intercoastal side. There could be some higher water, but just to give you a quick glance at some of the water levels. And again, keep an eye on your tides. There's a Holden Beach, and then Oak Island. You see some of the higher water, and then towards the Outer Banks, you could see some of these levels. Again, I don't think this is too off the charts, but with sea level rise and subsidence, some of these areas are flooding more frequently and flooding that haven't flooded in the past with less water rise. So just to, if you're near the water, especially right close to sea level, you might want to move the car, get things off, because there could briefly be some water 1 to 3 feet above that mean stage. So just a heads up that this system is going to be moving up fairly quickly and out of here. That if it occurs near high tide in your location, just be ready for that. I'll keep an eye on the system throughout the afternoon as it moves through. But right now, it looks like this is going to be a big rainmaker on Thursday for the I-95 and East Corridor. And then it's out of here fairly quickly. Of course, stay tuned. There are some new tropical storm watches that were just issued for parts of the South Carolina coast. You see this area in blue real quickly. There's already a tropical storm watch here. We might see tropical storm watches extended up the coast, or warnings, even though it technically would be a depression. Some of the impact, especially in the Outer Banks, I think is likely going to see a tropical storm watch just because of the potential of tropical storm force winds out in that area.